Hello, today I will be explaining the falling rate of profit and why it is an inherent trend of capitalism. Firstly, we're going to explain a few terms. Firstly, we need to understand value, and we can understand value by understanding the labor theory of value, which says the duration of socially necessary labor to produce a commodity is how we define the objective value of that commodity. For example, here we have a chair factory and a table factory, both which employ one worker who takes 1 hour to make a chair and a table respectively. Both of these commodities have an identical value. There are three things that make up value: constant capital, variable capital, and surplus value. Constant capital is raw materials, machinery, factories, stuff of that sort. Variable capital is labor power, so money spent by the capitalist on the labor of the worker. And finally, surplus value. Surplus value is profit. It is value created by a worker that is extracted by a capitalist or that he/she doesn't get as a wage. Before I explain further, I need you to understand that constant capital is not capable of creating value beyond its own cost. This is because, although it can increase productivity, the only thing that can create more value is further exploitation of labor, or an increase in surplus value. This is because constant capital is simply an embodiment of all the labor it took to make it, and all that value is being transferred to the value of the new commodity that it is creating. It is important to note that constant capital usually grows much faster than variable capital decreases, but this isn't a universal law, and there are exceptions, but for all intensive purposes, we can treat this as the reality. Let's say a capitalist owns a chair factory with a variable capital of $300 employing 3 people, and let's say the constant capital is $1,000. Let's also say that the surplus value for this purpose is $200. The numbers we use here don't really matter. It's just numbers I'm throwing in. So to find the rate of profit, we need to use the formula R equals surplus value divided by constant capital plus variable capital. And to solve that, we'll put our numbers in. So 1,000 plus 300 and 200 on top, and that'll equal 15%. So that is our rate of profit. Since capitalism is a competitive endeavor, there is a constant need to increase efficiency and decrease labor costs. With advances in technology, the capitalist now only requires one person to maintain the same level of productivity, so his variable capital can now be put at 100. But the new machinery, his constant capital, is now slightly higher, which we'll put at 1,400. Even though what previously required 3 people can now be done by only 1, the amount of value being produced by this worker has not changed, so the surplus value is still 200. And once we put our new numbers into the formula, we can see that our new rate of profit is only 12%. It's important to understand that this is a trend, not a law, and there are ways to offset it for long periods of time. This is done by increasing exploitation. Let's go back to our example. If we now change the variable capital to 75 and the surplus value to 225, we can now plug those numbers back into our equation and we're going to get 15%, which is the same rate of profit pre-automation. So to make up for the falling rate of profit, the capitalist must increase the rate of exploitation. Very quickly, I'd like to go over what I mean by rate of exploitation, so I'm just referring to the rate of surplus value, and the formula for that is surplus value divided by variable capital. So that would be 225 divided by 75, and that gets us a rate of surplus value of 300%. And if we look at our example pre-automation, we can see that the rate of exploitation was only 66%. The last thing I wanted to cover in this video is the crisis of overproduction. Under capitalism, constant increases in productivity creates a surplus of commodities, which coincides with an increase in exploitation as we previously discussed. This, of course, decreases their purchasing power and causes economic recessions. To sum it up in 3 main points, Constant capital, while increasing productivity, does not create new value. It only transfers its value to the commodities it produces. To avoid the profit rate falling, the capitalist must increase the rate of exploitation of the worker. Increases in productivity create a surplus of commodities, while the purchasing power of the working class decreases, causing economic crashes. That's all I'm going to be going over today. I hope it helped.